Gruul Adventures deck. Very consistent, kind of a clean build, if you will. Coming in and trying to do the same thing every time as often as possible. Let's see how things play out. As you can see here, if you look down in Martin Yuza's opening hand, he's certainly aware of this archetype that he's facing down this round, and he's even has a bunch of main deck inclusions that are quite good against it, including, you see big Gargs there, Elder Gargaroth in the main, and as well as the removal spells that you outlined.
Yeah, Gargaroth is a card that's going to play a key role in this matchup. It's so large. All the text on that card does matter. And while I don't think this is the ideal perfect hand here for Martin, because that Kiora, Best the Sea God, yeah, kind of a card you'd rather find with Emergent Ultimatum. Prefer to not have in your hand. When you're doing this 80 card thing with Urian, your opening hand isn't always going to be perfect. So sometimes some wonky ones are going to be drawn. But you mentioned Elder Gargaroth, and with good reason. That's what he's playing towards for the early stages of this game.
Yeah, Martin's going to kick things off by just playing Valki, God of Lies from hand. He's going to take Rimrock Knight away. It was the only option on Nassif's side. Nassif's hand, well, he drew another Rimrock Knight for the turn, but he has to seek his Chariot. Shatterskull Smashing, and kind of a bunch of lands here.
Yeah, I mean, not the most exciting hand, to be sure. Taking that Rimrock Knight was nice there for Martin. As you mentioned, Nassif drawing another copy of that, and then the Lovestruck Beast is on an adventure. Not the most explosive of hands, though, from this strategy, right? No Magda, no Despera Sentinel. Very kind of slow and plotting to kick this game off. And as we know, when you're slow and plotting against this Emergent Ultimatum deck, that's not where you want to be, especially if you don't have access to something like a Negate or a different type of counterspell to stop Ultimatum from resolving.
Well, he's going to have to settle for a pretty anemic turn, chip in for one, and then cast Rimrock Knight, hard cast from hand with really not a whole lot going on here. We see the Lovestruck Beast into the Chariot. This is still the flexibility that you get from the adventure cards, but boy, not a lot of real hard-hitting punch there, and it looks like Yuza is going to have some time to develop his game plan. Now, kind of good news here for Gabriel Nassif, as Martin's turn is land, pay tax for Yorion. Woohoo.
Well, it's good and bad news, right? in a way, because if I'm Nassif, I'm kind of like, that's all he's got to do this turn. That means, is his hand good? Is his hand really bad? I'm not entirely sure. Martin, as you can see, he's kind of, laid back, relaxing there in the bottom right-hand corner of our screen. But what I foresee here this turn, Martin probably just trades his Valki with the Rimrock Knight. Yeah, the other Rimrock Knight goes back. Then you've got Eliminate. You've got your draw step. You've got Gargaroth and Urian to play towards. So, I mean, I like Martin's positioning. It's early, but I kind of like where he's at to start things off.
See if Nassif can get something rolling here on his side outside of the sort of scripted plays that he has in front of him. Again, when you're thinking about the pressure that the players are facing here, these are two seasoned pros. They're going to understand the stakes even early in the day here. I think that there's kind of an interesting flow to a tournament where, even though every match really is critically important if you're aiming for top 8, there's a feeling that the earlier matches in the day are less important than the ones that end up popping up later. But in league play, that's just completely untrue, even if it's not true in Swiss as well, or traditional tournament structures. And these guys are going to be very dialed in. You see a trade there. Nassif sent in with the Rimrock Knight, got traded off there for Valki. And the Lovestruck Beast is ready to rumble with his friend here. Is there anything here for Yuza? He has Eliminate in hand. I guess he's just going to lean on that.
Yeah, I mean, lean on that in the short term, and then the 5-mana Haymakers start coming. You mentioned Gargaroth. We've basically played a beautiful game up into this point. Our Elder Gargaroth is incredibly impactful, right? This turn, I imagine we're going to kill the Lovestruck Beast with the Eliminate as opposed to the 1/1. That would probably be what I do, but obviously I'm working with perfect information where Martin is not, so we'll see how he wants to go about using this removal spell. And we got to mention the Emergent Ultimatum that was drawn last turn for Martin as well, because, again, we were talking about just bridging the gap until you actually do resolve that 7-mana Haymaker that generally wins the game. There's the Eliminate on the Lovestruck Beast. Well, now he's actually got the card to play towards, too. So now it's about, got to find a couple of lands, got to make sure I've got the color requirements, and just bridge the gap until I resolve that. And if I do, I should win.
Yeah, it looks like this Elder Gargaroth is going to be the stop sign here for Yuza, and it probably is going to be the card that ends up either winning him the game, or if it gets removed, then he could actually fall behind quickly enough, as he doesn't have quite enough to follow up a Yorion into otherwise empty boards. Okay, right? I mean, that's a big blocker. It does things, but that's a type of card that Nassif can actually get through, where the Elder Gargaroth is actually very difficult for Nassif to get out of the way, and he may have his hands full here. I think we're going to see the weight of the game probably resting on that Gargfather's shoulders.
Yeah, the tough thing here for Nassif is his draw was pretty anemic. I mean, if you think about the key cards from a Gruul Adventures deck, I think of Edgewell Innkeeper, I think of Embercleave. I think of some of the bigger haymakers like that, or I think of Mana Accelerants that allow me to play multiple spells in one turn, ideally ahead of schedule. None of that has happened this game. We saw Heart's Desire into a Rimrock Knight, into trade, play another Rimrock Knight. I played the Lovestruck Beast, still have the Rimrock Knight in hand. This start has been extremely anemic for what this deck's ceiling is. And I think for Nassif, he has to have a ceiling draw, especially in game one, to win this match. And he has not had that.
No, he's really been playing extraordinarily fair Magic thus far. Now, we do know that there are cards that he can rip off the top. Now, the window has closed on a few of them that you mentioned. But if we do see Embercleave, for example, that's the type of card that can give him an advantage that he can capitalize on through blockers, right? Which is really the game plan here for Juza, is to play this Gargaroth, kind of cross your fingers, and then backup plan is Yorion until he can buy enough time to get to Emergent Ultimatum. So here it is. The first big play of the game for Juza is, here's an Elder Gargaroth. Can you do anything about it, Gabriel Nassif?
Well, if you take a look in Nassif's hand with that other copy of Rimrock Knight, which Martin knows about because of earlier plays in this game, involving Valky and taking a look at the hand and all that stuff, and you can see that little eyeball highlight over that Rimrock Knight. Martin knows that it's not Rimrock Knight that he cares about, it's Boulder Rush that he cares about, and making that Bone Crusher Giant a bigger attacker. So we'll see, what's combat going to look like. Both players are playing with that information. I know that you know that I know that you know, that sort of thing. So We'll see how this turn does unfold. But however it goes, I think it's good for Martin because that's just how good Elder Gargaroth is in a spot like this.
All right, so Nassif's lining up 4 mana here for Chariot. And that'll let him leave up a mountain for his Rimrock Knight.
Yeah, no attack doesn't surprise
me. It looks like no attack.
Yeah, I mean, this cultivate's actually a pretty nice draw too here, because the one thing that Martin was really missing was just some lands to be able to get to this Emergent Ultimatum. This actually solves that problem perfectly. Instead of having to go runner, untap land, resolve Emergent Ultimatum. Now we've got cultivate. That also allows him as well, if he cares to play Omen of the Sea as well. So I don't know if that was the best draw on his deck, but it feels pretty darn close.
Boy, that seems really nice here. Yeah, it sets him up for the ultimatum next turn, so a turn sooner, and make sure that he gets all of his mana. And as you mentioned, he even will get Omen of the Sea on the battlefield if he'd like, and that can be a nice little thing to blink with Yorion if this game goes for a while longer. No attacks here. The Gargaroth just acting as that stop sign, as even a full card plus another, say, half of a card or portion of a card is something that Gabriel Nassif would be thrilled to trade off for that Gargaroth, given what a pain it is to have on the battlefield. So Juza says, no, I'm not going to give you that option. Just send the turn back.
Think about where we are in this game right now, too. I think we're on turn number 6 now here for Nassif. Don't think he's missed a land drop at all. Played Shatter Skull Smashing, as an untapped land last turn. So we're on turn 6, and Martin's at 17. And that's a problem.
This isn't great.
Yeah, Nassif's the aggro deck. Yes, he can play a card advantage style because of Ventures, but in this matchup, he's very much the aggro deck, and Martin is the control deck, and our control player there, which is oftentimes Nassif, not here this weekend. So Martin's playing the role of the control player, and he's sitting comfy at 17, and it's got a real haymaker to resolve next turn.
God, it is kind of funny, isn't it? And, you kind of outlined this before from Nassif, but, you think about this deck of being either explosive, right, where it curves into like Embercleave, or it can play that material game where they lead off with an Innkeeper or two, and then they just outcard you. And he somehow managed to do neither. He's just right in that awkward middle ground. And even just the lone Elder Gargaroth so far has been able to hold off all the attacks here from Nassif. Let's see Oh, he's going to crew up the chariot here. Are we going to see a big attack?
Well, I think he's getting to the point right now where he's just like, look, I got to do something. Like, I can't just keep doing nothing. It looks like we might see a hard cast Rimrock. I don't even think he's going to attack now. All right, so I guess the plan here is I'm going to go wide, and I'm just going to hope that you don't have ultimatum or some way to wipe away this battlefield. I think that's Nassif's, that's his chip in a chair, as they say. That's his hope.
Yeah, well put. So we can see Omen of the Sea here on end step for Juza, who escapes yet another turn with no damage. He's down to 17 still. He finds a land, and is he interested in a Heartless Act? We'll have to find out here. He's got the mana lined up next turn. He's doing some counting, double black, double blue, triple green. Is it all there? One green, black, black, blue, blue.
Yeah, it looks like we're clear for takeoff.
Yep. It looks good from here. He's got Emergent Ultimatum immediately pulled out onto the stack, and there it goes. The correlation with resolving Emergent Ultimatum and winning the game is very, very high. It really is the entire goal of the deck, is to get to this point. And part of that, Cedric, is that it's flexible. You don't always go get the same three things.
Yeah, and that's part of the beauty of the card. There are a lot of different combinations you can have in a lot of different situations. Now, there is a bit of a trade-off here, right? You're playing an 80-card deck, which is helping you have that kind of flexibility. So there is some upside and some downside, to play the 80 cards as opposed to 60. And sometimes you draw these one-ofs that are a little bit awkward, like Kiora, Best of Sea God, but at the same time, Kiora is castable now if we want to go that route as well. So, you make some trade-offs with in-deck construction, but ultimately, when it looks like this, when you do your thing, and the flexibility of doing your thing when you resolve this ultimatum means that the juice is worth the squeeze, and we're seeing it right now in spades.
Here we go. Shadow's Verdict, Extinction Event. So you see that Martin has prioritized, well, what you mentioned at the end of last turn there, Cedric, which is getting some type of sweeper to happen here. It looks like he's going to get 2 for his trouble.
Yeah, Extinction Event and Shadow's Verdict is what Nassif gave him. Didn't want to give him All Runs Epiphany, which, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Evens is going to smush all of those.
Good God.
Yeah.
That was, I know that they're all going away either way, but my God, he just lost 8 creatures. And look at Nassif. He's just like, yeah, sure, take 6, I guess. And look at this, make a 3/3 beast here from Martin. He wants to close this game out quickly.
Now, Martin said, you know what, you had all the creatures. Now I'm going to go wide and finish you off. And that's part of the power of not only this deck, but one of the cards that you and I have both mentioned right at the top, which was Elder Gargaroth, the ultimate stop sign in a matchup like this. If Nassif doesn't have, Embercleave at the right moment, or has a really aggressive start, something to stop Elder Gargaroth, which, ironically enough, if you're taking a look at Martin's deck list, a one of fun of. Well done, Martin. Way to draw that card.
Way to be, Martin. Yeah. So a clean victory there for Martin Juza, really capitalizing on the extremely slow start there from Nassif, who could never get anything going. Martin winning the game on 17 life. It really wasn't close. And, you and I talked about it when he cast the Elder Gargaroth as kind of the big stop sign. It was, does this stick? Because if that's the case, then Martin can buy the time to cast the ultimatum, which he did to win the game. But if it didn't, right, if there was an Embercleave or some way for Nassif to actually put pressure on Juza, things could have turned out much differently. He just never found that from that slow draw.
No, it was the, I don't even want to say it was an average draw. I felt like it was the bottom end of his range as far as draws are concerned. Because he wasn't explosive. He wasn't quick out of the gate. And then he didn't have a card like Embercleave to kind of break things open, or heck, even a copy of the Great Henge, right? Just something to break the game open. He was just, kind of casting some stuff, and didn't even have Edgewell Innkeeper going either. So he played the most average of Magic that game. No fault of his own, obviously. Just right. That's how the cards came up that particular game, and we're going to see how they unfold this game. The problem I foresee here is that Martin's deck looks like it continues to get better after sideboard, and you're already seeing now an Elder Gargaroth once again. Martin's hand, it's good. It's got a lot of removal. It doesn't have a ton of lands, but it looks okay to me. I'm curious how you feel.
Well, this is interesting because, if we see Elder Gargaroth hit the battlefield again, I think Nassif's going to have nightmares about that thing and probably wish that he would have brought the deck that Yuza is playing, as this is a somewhat unusual choice here for Nassif, given his preferred play style. Now, being a professional player, he's the type to not really stick to anything, but we know what he'd rather be doing, and it's not cast Jespera Sentinel on turn 1, which is what he just did.
Yeah, Nassif, I would say, widening his range here a little bit with the Sentinel and now Magda. Now, this is a really good start. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing to really dislike about this start. And this is a much more explosive start that, these removal spells are going to have to help to run down, because now you're making mana. Now you're playing Heart's Desire, Lovestruck Beast the next turn. Now, for Martin, he ended up keeping his hand, and he's drawn back-to-back lands. So, now we have the ability to, basically go eliminate, add Urian, play Binding, potentially blink Binding, so on and so forth. But is it going to be fast enough? This eliminate is immensely helpful, though.
That's going to stem a lot of the bleeding here. And let's see what happens now. Nassif with Embercleave, Magda, Bone Crusher, and a Pathway in hand with Lovestruck Beast currently out on an adventure. But he's got options.
No,
it's going to be Magda again.
Yeah. I see why, if we think of Gruul Adventures decks from the previous standard format, Zendikar Rising standard, they didn't really look like this, with Sentinel and Magda and stuff like that. And what we're seeing now is this is kind of I don't even know if this is old school, that maybe I'm dating myself, maybe I'm dating us. This is more like
if it's you, it's me too, buddy. So
okay, fair enough. I know they aren't Birds of Paradise and Llanowar elves, but they are. Like that's what they're doing. It's a red-green deck that's basically, here's my mana accelerant. So not the traditional ones, to be able to play my 3 drops and 4 drops ahead of schedule. So, the Sentinel into Magda, into Lovestruck Beast. Now I'm kind of going wide. And now, unfortunately for Martin, he's got a big old grin on his face because he's going to take a shellacking next turn.
Oh, so Cedric Phillips compares Jespera Sentinel to a Mox. Jeez, on a broadcast too. Wow.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I heard everything. I heard it all.
Rather have the Sentinel too.
Oh, this gets a little bit awkward here for Yuza. He has his Quandrix Cultivator card I absolutely adore, but that does require blue, green, and then a blue or a green. So you do need 3 sources of blue and or green mana to cast it. And by playing a swamp here, he's going to prevent himself from being able to do that on turn 4, it looks like.
Yeah, I think Martin looking real dead, unfortunately for him. Because Nassif has, this is the kind of draw that we were talking about last game. That he didn't have either side of this. This time he has both sides. So think of the last game, just playing middling mid-range Magic without drawing any additional cards, no acceleration, no key card, nothing. This game he's accelerating, he's playing multiple spells in a turn, and he's drawn Embercleave. This is what it looks like in this matchup for him to win, and this is a huge hit.
Wow. So it's crazy because really that is the difference, right? Was the cleave, because we saw Gabriel use up all of his mana basically every turn. That was kind of the interesting thing about that first game, was how low powered his draw was, considering it wasn't involving like mana issues or, it was like, no, he hit his land drops, he used up all of his mana, and he did almost nothing. In this game, he's a little ahead of the curve thanks to the Sentinel. That helped a fair bit. But it's Embercleave, period. Like, now Martin basically doesn't have a way to come back from this because of the Embercleave.
Yeah, I'm thinking about if he draws exactly Extinction Event, what do we name odds and we still lose?
Odds kills that, and leaves those, and you're still dead, yeah.
And if you name evens, you lose too. So, Martin's hand, I'll say this. Martin's hand, if he were on to play that game, the story and the narrative that we're talking about is significantly different, because it's eliminate on 2 on the play, binding on 4. It might just be eliminate, get Urian, binding, all that other stuff. But that's not what happened. Nassif ties it up.
That's right. We had, kind of prototypical games from both players for the first 2, and maybe we'll get them both doing their thing in the third game. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with game 3 in just a minute. And welcome back. So game number 3 incoming between these two. Again, we saw Martin basically get to do what he wanted to do. He wasn't facing a massive amount of pressure, had a couple of well-timed removal spells, and was able to cast his ultimatum, which ultimately won the game for him. In game number 1, Nassif on the other side of the table just had that perfect draw and ran over Martin Yuza before he did really anything of consequence. Both players very happy with their wins out of the first couple of games. I wonder if we're going to see something more in the middle here in the last game, where the players, get to both kind of do what they're doing here and not be so one-sided. Let's find out. It is game number 3 between Gabriel Nassif and Martin Yuza as we get underway here in round number 2. We're happy that you're joining us on the stream. Thanks for hanging out. We're watching Standard at the moment, but we've also got Historic lined up for the weekend, so don't fret. You'll get to see that too. Much different looking format than the last time we covered it.
That's true. We're going to get the best of both worlds. That Mystical Archive is definitely having a huge impact, but we turn our attention to this particular game before the Tainted Pacts will be resolving later.
Right.
This start here for Martin, it's a pretty good hand. You've got acceleration. You don't have your payoff, and you've got ways to interact because he's got Elspeth's Nightmare, he's got Shadow's Verdict. So we've got acceleration and we've got some reactive removal. The next thing we have to find, which ideally is what Omen of the Sea is going to do, is find Emergent Ultimatum or Elder Gargaroth. So if I'm Martin, I'm like, hey, I'm 2/3 of the way home as far as the things that I'm looking for. I've got kind of my mana situation taken care of. I got this Cultivate here. I've got removal here in Shadow's Verdict to buy me some time. I just got to find that Haymaker to win the game with. And if he can do that, life is pretty good.
Yeah, I like his chances here. When you do see those sweepers pop up, just naturally drawn, it really can be the thing that changes the way that these games play out. Because for the most part, Nassif, from Nassif's side of the board, he will consider those, but there's so many times when you consider it and go, yeah, I can't play, I can't assume that you've drawn one of these sweepers when you're playing a Yorion deck, and I just need to sort of put my hand on the table and hope that it wins. And a lot of times the Yorion players are like, okay, Shadow's Verdict, I had it this time, and then you just sort of shrug and say, well, I guess we'll move on. And you see it in hand here. There's Shadow's Verdict. He even has Elspeth's Nightmare to maybe clean up a mess afterwards as well.
Yeah, it's kind of the frustrating thing sometimes about playing against the Yorion deck, because the Yorion decks are, of course, good, but they have to play 20 additional cards to get the Bird Serpent as a companion. So there's going to be some games that you play, and games that I've certainly played, where I just go, they're 80 cards, I'm going to jam, and I'm going to hope that they don't have it. They kind of got the bad side of their deck being 20 additional cards from just a math perspective. And sometimes, as you mentioned, the Yorion player just goes, well, but I do have it, so all your stuff's dead, and now you're dead.
Right.
And it's kind of the risk that you take on both sides. On the one side, you've played 20 additional cards for a good reason. On the other side, you're playing against it that has 20 additional cards, and you're like, I'm just going to jam and hope they didn't draw their thing because they have so many additional cards. And as Nassif is going to find out here in a moment, bad news coming.
Yes, very, very bad news. He plays a Lovestruck Beast. He will get in for 5 here with his motley crew, but down to 15 goes Martin Yuza, but now he's all ready to run here. Here's Shadow's Verdict, and Nassif can't do anything about it but look on and say, I just have to hope that you don't have a card like that, and like we just described, sometimes they do. It looks like Martin's deciding whether to play a Pathway or a tapped land here for his turn, perhaps mapping out what he needs to do, because as you mentioned, Cedric, the job's not done yet. That was step 1, but now there's going to be a rebuild turn here for Nassif, and Yuza's going to need to be able to fight back.
Kind of interesting on what Nassif wants to do on this turn. He's got a couple of different options, right? He can go Edgewall Innkeeper, cast Rimrock Knight. He can go Bone Crusher Giant, Edgewall Innkeeper. Go that way. Multiple spells that involve Edgewall Innkeeper. He could also go the Roiling Vortex route and try to make things, as far as Emergent Ultimatum is concerned, not that bad. But he's just going to play Innkeeper, play Bone Crusher, draw a card, rebuild his battlefield this way. And now, as you and I have both mentioned, step 1 is complete here for Martin. Now he's got to get to actually winning the game, and Omen of the Sea is a great card at finding ways to do so.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to try to kind of go for it all here, perhaps going for the Elspeth's Nightmare after he casts Wolfwillow Haven. He'll still have the Omen of the Sea available. He really wants to make sure he takes down Ooh, a Crowan War off the top, spicy. He really wants to make sure he takes down that Innkeeper, which he did here. Martin also, of course, is going to be concerned about a card like Embercleave, and getting the Elspeth's Nightmare going as soon as possible gives him the best chance to nab it. There's a window here for Nassif to go land Embercleave, Bone Crusher, but he doesn't have it.
I wonder what Nassif wants to do on this turn, because as you mentioned, Chapter 2 of Elspeth's Nightmare, target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-creature, non-land card from it, that player discards that card. So Vortex and the Crowan War would be selections here from Chapter 2 of Elspeth's Nightmare, and now, in a way, you're almost forced to deploy Roiling Vortex, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that card is
like
good. Because that card is good against exactly a Merchant Ultimatum. This is the easy part. When I'm playing, I'm just like, let me get the easy part of the way. I'm gonna attack you, okay?
Let's do that.
I'm gonna get you down to 11, and then I'm gonna think some more about what I want to do.
Yeah, the Crowan War, a little awkward here, right? It's the type of card that looks quite good if your opponent, like in game number 1, plays something like an Elder Gargaroth or whatever, and is like, okay, I'm leaning on this really hard to be the big stop sign that prevents you from killing me. But here, it's kind of just fodder for the Elspeth's Nightmare, assuming that Nassif decides to get that Roiling Vortex on the battlefield and away from the Nightmare.
Now, one other thing I'm thinking about here, and I don't know if this is necessary because this feels extremely greedy, is you could go Edgewall Innkeeper, Rimrock Knight, hope to peel a land.
Oh, God.
And then also play the Vortex. I mean, it's greedy.
He's doing it.
But sometimes, Marshall, greed is good.
He's doing it.
Do we hit? I think that's a hit.
He hit all of Oracles.
Ring-a-ding.
Wow. All right. So Nassif navigating the mid part of the game here, going for the big upside of being able to triple spell here, and he's done it. Roiling Vortex goes on the stack. Now, Martin still has the Omen of the Sea here at the ready, and with this information, that could very well change, what he's actually looking for at this point, because the Roiling Vortex is so good against Ultimatum that he may need to pivot a bit. Oh, is he considering just Jwari Disruption?
Ooh, that's an interesting idea. You could Disruption this Roiling Vortex, or you just play Omen. Looks like he's going to go with just the Omen. Those cards both... do those both stink? I don't know. Does he want to land? I don't think so. All right, well, I'm wrong.
He did want to land, all right.
Okay, so he's taking a land here because this allows him to... Okay, this makes some sense. He gets to pay for Yuri and then play it. Yeah, my brain broke.
Mm-hmm, yeah, so he can Yuri in here and then leave up options for Omen and Jwari Disruption. Boy, he just doesn't really care about the Roiling Vortex that much, huh?
I guess not.
Great turn for him.
Yep. Well, he found Ultimatum, and he can draw it if he wants. Okay, I was going to say, okay, what don't I know? What's going on here?
Right. Well, I mean, that Vortex is having a very big impact on the game.
Yeah.
There's an Eliminate off the top. The Vortex, I mean, is this just going to force Martin to go into some type of race?
Well, we got Nassif sitting at 19, Martin sitting at 10, going to be going down to 9 soon. Martin's got the best creature on the battlefield in Urian, so there's no real attacks unless Nassif was able to peel that last turn, which he drew a mountain. So he's kind of got the brick wall up, right? And he's got more manipulation in Omen and Eliminate. So going down to 9, I mean, 9's, that's a lot in this situation, I would say. It's a pretty healthy amount of life.
Okay.
Your ultimatum endgame is off the table now, but can you win another way? Can you find a Gargaroth where, it's not at its absolute best, but it's still a 6/6?
Right. Binding the Old Gods is something that he's going to want to find here. He could get rid of the Vortex with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just the versatility of that card.
Right. That must be where he's going. Otherwise, he is really going to be forced into a somewhat awkward situation where he has to race, but he could win it. I mean, he really is kind of firing away now as second Omen of the Sea. He drew an eliminate last turn, and now he has options on a Heartless Act. He could really keep Nassif's board pretty well clear here. And the Vortex does hit both players. Maybe there's a world where he can just kill everything on the other side of the battlefield, keep sifting through with the Omen, and just start crunching with Yorion. I mean, he has Nassif down to Mountain.
Yeah, and he can actually use the Roiling Vortex against him too. So if we do a little math here, let's say we just go, eliminate one creature, Heartless Act the other one, take 2 from the Bone Crusher Giant trigger, you're going to fall down to 7. Attack you for 4, put you down to 15. Roiling Vortex puts you down to 14. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna get aggressive here, which I think I'm in favor of, but it's also me, so obviously I'm in favor of attacking.
But Martin's like you that too, right?
That's true.
He loves turning creatures sideways and limited particularly, and I'm assuming that is the line that he wants to go for. I'd be surprised if he didn't attack here. It does feel like sitting around has some pretty serious downside when the Roiling Vortex is just kind of chipping away at you. But he's got to feel pretty warm and safe inside here that he's got options on 2 removal spells. Basically impossible for him to die from this position over the course of the next turn or 2.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. So let's see, 7 to 14, draw step, brick.
Yeah, that's a brick at this point. It really is. Now I assume that Martin is priced into using Heartless Act here on the 3/1 Rimrock Knight just because he can't let his life total get too low and end up dying to something like a top deck Bone Crusher Giant or something along those lines, which will leave an Edgewall Innkeeper on the battlefield, but it'll be by itself.
Yeah, I'm with you. This looks good. And we can't forget too that at the couple things. One, you can still cycle Zagoth Triome. That's a new draw, or sacrifice an Omen for Scry 2. So we got some options here for Martin on Nassif's end step. And we can also cash in those Wolf Willow Havens for 2/2s if we want to keep, this attacking thing going on. So I like Martin getting aggressive in this spot. Again, the Emergent Ultimatum endgame is basically off the table, but still very winnable through non-traditional means for this strategy.
Yeah, it looks like he's just got a 3-turn clock lined up here. He's way ahead on the damage race, and he has prospects on seeing a lot of cards on the top of his library from scrying, maybe even drawing extra cards that Gabriel Nassif just doesn't have. Like, look at that. 2 lands go to the bottom. That's the type of thing that Nassif doesn't get to do, and that could really help out Martin here.
I was curious if Martin was going to set an upkeep stop to maybe scry 2 on his upkeep with this other Omen. It looks like that's what's happening.
It does.
Yep. See how this looks. Yeah, that'll work. Those are both good.
Yeah, and funny enough, he'd rather just have the Heartless Act to take out the Innkeeper to make sure that Nassif doesn't have one of those stupid turns. Mm-hmm. And then, he can keep the binding. But the funny part is the Vortex is actually working for him at this point.
So right now, if you're Martin, I think the question you're asking yourself is, how did I lose this game? Right? Mm-hmm. And I think the answer to that question and why he kept Heartless Act instead of binding the old gods, I think, is exactly Goldspan Dragon. Mm-hmm. Just like a haste threat that deals a decent chunk of damage in combination with the Vortex pings is something that you want to play around. And so Heartless Act, I believe, does a better job of that than binding the old gods killing the Roiling Vortex does. And so I think that's why he was thinking about which card to keep. And I think Heartless Act is basically the check mark against Goldspan Dragon, and so that's why he made that selection.
Okay. Yeah, it's always a tricky situation, right? Because you would like to get that Innkeeper off the battlefield, because if it's not a Goldspan Dragon, it could be an adventure creature, which could easily lead into another adventure creature. And we've seen how this chain can go. But at the same time, if you use your Heartless Act now, you do leave the shields down for the dragon, and that is very, very scary. Okay, well, he's going to get in there. So this is going to knock Nassif to effectively 9 off of the trigger.
Little ABA here by Martin. Always be attacking.
That's right.
What is that thing?
Song Mad Treachery is the draw step here for Nassif.
What is this?
That would give him lethal Well, this is about as close as they're going to get. This is a threaten effect that's also a land. So he gets to steal Yorion. And Martin's going to have to decide if he wants to kill his own Yorion with the Heartless Act. Now, as it stands, he would take 5 then on his upkeep die to the Vortex, so he can't take all the damage. He could kill the Innkeeper and then play Binding to kill the Vortex on his turn and be at 1.
Yeah, and that was the thing I was going to mention, right? Is if you Heartless Act the 1/1, you take 4, you go to 2, then you take the trigger from the Vortex, you go to 1, then you Binding it because you know that's your draw step. Well, actually, hold on. Oh no. The Hall of Oracles works itself into the equation.
Oh God, that's sorcery speed. Tap, put a +1/+1 counter on one of your creatures. So if Nassif puts it on Yorion, that will actually he didn't, but that would force Martin to kill his Yorion, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so he has to kill his own creature now.
Yeah.
Okay.
He does.
Because
now wait. No, he's still
He's supposed to kill the Innkeeper in response to the activation. It's the same thing we just talked about, right? If he kills the Innkeeper, that's a tilt. Because if he kills the Innkeeper, he still goes to that 2, then down to 1 from the trigger, and then bindings. And there's the facial reaction in the corner. He just realized the same thing we just figured out, Marshall.
Totally. No. You can only remove a +1/+1 counter at the most with Heartless Act there. So he has to kill his own Yorion. Now he's going to fall down to 3. Oh, but there's an Elder Gargaroth. And I'll tell you what, he could steal this thing back again thanks to the Gargs. Oh my goodness. What a game. Now he goes from binding the old gods to kill. And it looks like Martin Yuza maybe bailed out here. Oh, wow.
Unreal couple of draw steps. Okay, well, this game got good quickly.
Holy smokes. What a roller coaster ride for Martin Yuza, too, because he went from feeling pretty unassailable to then making a timing misstep and ending up having to kill his own creature. And then all of a sudden he's right back in it with Gargaroth off the top.
Yeah, I mean, Nassif getting back into this thing a little bit, though, here with Lovestruck Beast, draw a card, all that jazz, which is not so bad. So going to try to go wide again, put a counter there so that Lovestruck Beast can, well, of course.
Oh, wow. Look at Martin's face. He just can't believe it. He's like, this thing has gone so crazy for him. Oh, boy. You can see the emotional roller coaster that he's on here. And yes, that does include highs as well as lows because Gargaroth into Emergent Ultimatum. Not bad. Not the worst here.
Skill game, baby.
Wow.
Sometimes magic is easy.
Now for Nassif, it's been a roller coaster, but the kind that just drops you from like you just fall down. There's no
it's like upward. It's like that terror drop in
that's the one. Yeah.
At Walt Disney where the floor just goes out underneath you or whatever.
Wait for it to just collapse out from underneath you, and that's what's happened here for Nassif. The treachery there so close to being amazing, and then this actually looked pretty good, right? The Beast, he drew a card. He's got another Innkeeper. There's some real hope there. And then it just falls apart. The Emergent Ultimatum makes life so difficult here for Gabriel Nassif that it's really hard to imagine him coming back at this point.
Yeah. Yep, that's going to just make creatures have Death Touch. Death Touch puts Trample, Binding something else.
Wow, what an incredibly swingy game, particularly from Yuza's perspective. As again, it really did, he was in that mode you described earlier, Cedric, of how do I lose, right? I'm going to start narrowing down the possibilities on what could happen to make me lose. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose. and then the Gargfather kind of saved the day. Wow. What a game.
Yeah.
What a huge win here for Yuza as well. Remember, Nassif sitting second in the standings, really trying to close this out and secure a world seat today, and Juza more in the middle of the standings and really trying to keep himself relevant there. A big win here over somebody who's really kind of crushed the MPL, Gabriel Nassif, as Martin Juza looks to kind of finish things off here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's any card that Nassif can draw. I don't really think there is. The top of the mind comes to like cards I'm thinking of. Goldspan Dragon, not going to cut it. Some sort of threaten effect, not going to cut it. Embercleave, not going to cut it. Perforos's Intervention, I don't think that's going to cut it.
No, that's not it. Yeah, the Gargaroth's so strong. Just even if you have to throw it as a blocker for something that's huge, like a big X1 from the Intervention, that type of thing. But
yeah, there's Edgewell Innkeeper. You're a little late, old buddy.
And that's going to be it. Martin Juza escapes is the word I'm going to use this round with a victory. Boy, every detail counts down the stretch here, Cedric. We saw Martin, even with the Song Mad Treachery drawn off the top there for Nassif, Martin was still in a position where if he had timed the removal spell there, the Heartless Act, correctly, he could have still been in a commanding, if not winning position, and just allowing that counter to go on completely changed everything.
Yeah, I mean, there was some interesting decision making there, like genuinely, like just kind of the back and forth on that particular turn about, what was the best way to go about using Heartless Act and keep myself alive in this game? When was the appropriate time, if I ever found a Binding the Old Gods, to actually take care of the Rolling Vortex, which was having, as the game kept going, right? Rolling Vortex's impact on the game initially was like kind of here, and we were just taking the elevator up of like it's mattering more and more and more and more and more, to the point where it was having a significant impact on the game and had to be blown up by that Binding the Old Gods. So a lot of great back and forth between two of the best to ever do it. That's all we can really ask for when we're doing these league weekends, right? It's just games that look like that.
Hey, let's get two Hall of Famers in a scrap and see what happens, and yes. That's what happened. So really exciting stuff there from our two players. It is ultimately Martin Juza who picks up the win there, handing Nassif a loss. Nassif's going to have to bounce back as we move forward. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have more magic here. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back, Marshall Sutcliffe here with Cedric Phillips. Whew, needed a little breath there after that opening match for us, Cedric. It was a real up and down ride there for our two Hall of Famers. Now we've got another match to bring you here. We're actually going to be entering in the second game for this one. This is Brian Braun-Duin, who's playing Izzet Midrange against Ken Yukuhiro on mono white. Let's take a look at the Izzet Midrange deck here. You see some newcomers with Galazeth kind of standing out, as well as Iteration there, a couple of cards over.
Yeah, a couple of newbies hanging out here from Strixhaven School of Mages, Goldspan Dragon. I mean, you've got this 7 dragon package for sure, and then you've got also the Snow Mana base. So if I look at like powerful key cards, I mean, this deck is actually kind of full of them, right? Bonecrusher Giant, Brazen Borrower, we know what they're capable of. These dragons, they're a little bit newer to the scene, but we know that they're powerful as well. Explosive Iteration, tying the room together, and then Faceless Haven, one of my favorite cards there from Kaldheim, along with that Snow Mana base, means that this deck is full of powerful goodies that, you know, it makes it so that this deck can kind of beat anything. It's not a deck that I ever feel like is good against. I don't feel like it's heavily advantaged against everything, but I don't think it's heavily disadvantaged against anything either. I think it's just a good, solid, high card quality deck.
Yeah, love that Magma Opus too. Expressive Iteration, really nice early. Magma Opus is an absolute slammer late in the game, and of course you can cash it in for a treasure if you need to in the early part. I just love it when people, you know, dip their toe into the pool of having something just absurd in the late game. And even though there's only one of them in the deck, let's take a look at the mono white list of kind of really the premier brewer at the top level of Magic. It's Ken Yukuhiro, and he's just brought mono white aggro. What do you make of it, Zed?
Well, I see that we took the opportunity to bury the lead here a little bit. Best deck in the format, Marshall, is what we make of it. The thing about
I figured you might like this one.
You know, the thing about mono white is there's like a million different ways to build it, because there are genuinely a ton of really, really good white creatures in the format. Now, the easy part of building the deck, right, is the plains, which are going to be snow-covered, and Faceless Haven, which is the best creature land in the format and one of the best creature lands of all time. But how you build the deck from there, it can go a lot of different ways. For example, Ken this weekend has Legion Angel, 2 in the main deck. You can make an argument for 1 in the main deck, which people have done. You can make an argument for none in the main deck, all in the sideboard. Sure. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can go there. Which 2-drops do you want to play? A lot of discussion around that. Maul the Skyclaves. Ken has 1. I've seen people play 4 for a really long time. One card that I think, though, we have to touch on that is starting to become non-negotiable, Marshall, is Elite Spellbinder. Paulo Vitor.
I want your take on this card. It's been out for a while. Is it the real deal or what?
Busted. But White doesn't get access to cards like this. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it is.
They don't get cards like this. This card's fantastic in every way imaginable. I can't wait to see it in this particular matchup, but also just kind of all weekend long. Like, it's so very good. I'm excited to watch it in action.
Me too. I'm actually really excited to see Elite Spellbinder hit the battlefield here and see what it can do. And of course, Paulo will be excited to see that as well, as that is his card commemorating his win at the World Championship, and it has his likeness on it and everything. Perhaps one of the coolest prizes you could get. And let's get underway here. Ken's looking at a 1-lander. Now this deck plays 20 lands, and he decides that's not quite enough to go on, and he's going to keep a 3-lander with double aspirant, though, it looks like, and he even could lead off here. Yes, and he is in fact going to lead off here with Giant Killer.
Now remember, this is a sideboarded game, so you see Banishing Light in the deck as well. 24 lands there for Ken, 20 plains, as you mentioned, and also those 4 Faceless Havens. But the thing I want to point out about mono white is it is a very mana-intensive deck. I've seen versions and have played versions of this deck that do play 25 lands, just because you have plenty of things to do with your mana over the course of a game, be it activating Faceless Haven, activating Giant Killer for its tapping ability, casting Chop Down, so on and so forth. So you're a deck that doesn't mind flooding out a little bit, not the end of the world, because you have so much to do with your mana.
Very critical here early. The first Luminarch Aspirant hits the battlefield, and BBD has the answer before even one trigger goes on the stack. That can be really important. And then this is a critical turn for Expressive Iteration here. You'd like to play it when you have a land drop to give, so that you can kind of use that free exile spot on a land drop, which we see BBD doing here. Then you can get the best of the other card in your hand for the future. So a true 2-for-1, and also with some selection in there as well. You can see why people have been experimenting with that card in multiple formats, not just standard here. As we see Luminarch Aspirant number 2 hit the battlefield, that is going to trigger this time and get that Giant Killer in for a couple of points of damage. What do you make of the board right now?
Well, you kind of like Ken's positioning, but I think I love Ken's positioning, if he's able to draw land number 4 to get this Legion Angel chain started. Worth noting here that Ken is up a game, Brian down a game, as Brian didn't do much of anything in game number 1 is what we were told. So Brian looking to tie things up, but I do want to kind of circle back to Explosive Iteration just briefly and just mention that, Marshall, I think that's a card that you and I are going to be talking a lot about over the next handful of years.
Yeah.
It's a really good one.
It is really strong. If you can make the mana work, Expressive Iteration is the type of card that that gives you access to 2 key things that you don't often get out of 1 or 2 mana cantrips. Usually you can get a little card advantage or you can get some card selection, and this actually gives you access to both, which is rare.
That Banishing Light was key to take care of that dragon. Luminarch Aspirant is kind of doing its thing, pumping up a Giant Killer. Goldspan Dragon is an immensely powerful card, though, so maybe we're starting to work ourselves in a bit of a racing situation.
That is exactly the case here. The Goldspan Dragon just got in. That's going to produce treasure here. In the meantime, though, you want to pick a fight with the mono white deck. Usually they're quite happy to oblige you, and that's what's happening here. Is Ken Yukuhiro is going to slam once again, this time for 5 damage. As you mentioned, the Banishing Light taking out Galazeth, pretty key there. And it looks like BBD's considering Petty Theft, but decides against it.
Yeah, I was curious if he's going to fire that off because, of course, with Goldspan Dragon on the battlefield, treasures can be sacrificed for 2 mana as opposed to 1. So is there going to be a moment that he actually wants to fire this off with the Petty Theft, or does he have bigger plans on his next turn? Because his hand is kind of expensive right now, right? He's got another copy of Goldspan Dragon, Bonecrusher Giant over there on an adventure, Allrun's Epiphany, allowing for an additional turn. So he's got some options available to him about how he wants to go about using this 2 mana at his disposal via that treasure.
Very awkward for him. He would prefer to return the giant and not take the 4 damage here, but that means that Chop Down is now available for Ken Yukuhiro to kill his Goldspan Dragon. The awkward part, Ken already had it. He has one in his hand.
Yep.
And so that means that BBD takes the lump of 4 and is still going to lose his dragon anyway.
So let's see what this looks like. So Goldspan Dragon's going to make a treasure. Chop Down's going to try to take care of this. It's going to succeed in taking care of it.
Yeah.
Do we want to Petty Theft at all? Because you could also make an argument. I mean, there's a lot of things you can Petty Theft on this battlefield, right? You can make an argument for Petty Thefting the Banishing Light. You can make an argument for Petty Thefting the large Giant Killer. That's a 4 or 5. I mean, it's not great to put that back in hand because then you're giving your opponent access to another Chop Down, but she might have some interest in slowing down these beatdowns that you're taking.
No, absolutely. I could see multiple options here. I could also see BBD, taking out the Banishing Light, getting another treasure, and trying to set up for Alrun's Epiphany or something along those lines for the next turn to kind of buy himself some time, some blockers, and a nice flyer in the air. He really has a lot of options, and his life total's high enough here at 8 that he can afford to kind of explore a bunch of different options. As we see the dragon fall here, here comes the follow-up play, the most obvious one from Ken. He's just going to play the Giant Killer onto the battlefield, and BBD draws an island for the turn. His hand looks very strong here, though. He has an Ox, another Goldspan Dragon, Alrun's Epiphany. He has an Expressive Iteration and a Brazen Borrower, as well as a Bonecrusher on an adventure. No shortage of things to do for BBD. He just needs to make sure that he's alive to do them.
Yeah, so that land was an interesting draw, right? Because you can play this, you can play Goldspan, right? Now your treasures, you're going to have, if he attacks, he'll have 3 of them, which means he has access to 6 mana. Now, what do we want to do with that 6 mana? Because there's a lot of options there, too. You could cast Ox of Gonish, you could play Bonecrusher Giant, and then waste 1 of the mana, and have Petty Theft available. I mean, it looks like he's just going to pass and do nothing. So, let's see, 4, 5, 6, trigger 7, so it's not lethal.
Okay. He's playing mono white, right? So he gets to have wiggle room with regards to his life total. He doesn't have to worry about getting stomped out of the game or something along those lines. He can really get as close as he wants to 0 as long as he doesn't cross that line. And of course, when it comes to playing against these aggro decks and such, that can often just be an entire extra turn. And when you look at the resources that BBD has available to him, that's massive. So even here, he could theoretically go to 1.
Yeah.
See what he wants to do.
It's good. He's trying to build a game. He's trying to build a game around stealing this with Epiphany.
Yep, that's exactly what's happening.
It's some combination of petty theft and Epiphany. That's what we're looking at.
He has gotten in twice with Goldspan Dragons, and those chunks of damage really add up. Now, this is where things get interesting. There's that first Legion Angel. He can go get the other one.
Well, I think we're probably done here, and here's why I think that. So I think we go end step, petty theft, the Legion Angel.
Okay.
Untap, draw. It doesn't matter what he draws. Attack you, put you to 8, make a treasure. Use my 5 lands, one of the treasures, to cast Epiphany. Get 2 more tokens. That's 6 damage. Play Brazen Borrower. That's an additional 3. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 minus 8 is -1.
It's lethal.
Yeah, it's lethal. So this should just be it now.
Yeah, you got it. That's the line for sure. And I think you can see on Ken Yukihiro's face that he may have pieced together that there were some possibilities where Alrund's Epiphany could generate some type of lethal attack over the course of 2 turns.
Goldspan Dragon is messed up.
That is messed up when you have this much stuff to do. And Ken is just nodding his head and saying, why didn't I play a sweet deck like this? Yeah. In comes the Goldspan Dragon, down to 8 falls Ken Yukihiro. And the writing's on the wall here as we see BBD not with literal lethal, and now he has literal lethal.
Yeah, if it wanted to be Brazen Bar or Bonecrusher Giant, doesn't matter. It's a W either way.
That's right. 4, 8, 10. I gotta say, Cedric, that BBD did get in for an additional point of damage over your line.
That's true. That's true.
So strictly better from him.
To that I say that's why he's there and I'm here.
Because he got in for one more.
He got the extra point that I probably would have missed. So
yeah,
there you go. there it is.
Oh, we did it.
This Dragon's deck isn't mid-range. I mean, it has the ability to kind of, I don't want to say win out of nowhere, but you're kind of comfortable, and then all of a sudden, Alrund's Epiphany in combination with these dragons makes it incredibly uncomfortable.
Totally.
Really.
And the fact that the threats are flying, really matters, right? There's scenarios where you can think, okay, things are okay. I've got some board. I'm ahead. I'm attacking. I'm going to pass a turn to you. And then, they go end step, cast a Brazen Borrower. And you're like, oh, well, you only had 1 dragon. Now you've got 7 power out, right? And then they're like, Alrund's Epiphany, attack you for 7. And you're like, wait, 7 and then another 7 plus the 2 from the birds. Like, if you got hit at all, you're just dead, right?
Yeah.
And that was like when you passed the turn, when you said go, they had 4 power, right? And, over the course of you not getting to do anything for those next turns, you take 4 twice, you take another 3 twice, and you take an additional 2. It's just like, completely different than when you said go.
It's one of the things I think that a lot of players do like about this deck, and why this Izzet Midrange deck is starting to pick up a little bit of traction in this metagame. We saw this style of deck pre-Strixhaven, where it didn't have access to Prismari and Magma Opus and Expressive Iteration, and it just kind of came up a little bit short. So it was something that people tried at the offset of the format, and then it kind of went away, and we went back to adventures and all other stuff. But it's making its mark. But I will say this, Marshall, Mono White likes to be on the play in game number 3. I mean, I guess game number 1 and game number 2 too, but it wants to be on the play in spots like this. This is a pretty good hand, but Brian's actually got a pretty good hand too, because he can kill the first couple of threats via those frostbites. So should be an interesting third game here between these two.
Oh, I love this. I love seeing Mono White on the play. Let's see what it can do, right? Let's put some stuff out and get the job done here, Ken Yukihiro. But as you mentioned, both players, by the way, mulliganing to 6, but BBD with the triple frostbite opener now. I already like his chances just based off of that.
Well, you didn't see my face, but I'm not.
I can imagine.
I mean, I'm not thrilled.
This is not what, Ken needs to have a board of some magnitude, going before things can go. Now, there's a little bit of hope here. There's a Luris in hand here for Ken Yukihiro. That is a card, if played correctly, that he can use to rebuild his board.
Okay, third land's not bad. So I think this is the time where you probably fire off Elite Spellbinder and you just see another Frostbite and you're just like, come on.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Poor BBD. He looks like Zeus over there, just like tossing bolts around like it's nothing. Here comes the Spellbinder. Two options on that, and he's going to go ahead and take the Frostbite with no window there for BBD to actually cast it in response. It is going to be taxed for the rest of the game, making that Frostbite kind of awkward. An untapped land here would let him just immediately kill the Spellbinder, and he does have that in hand, so I think we're just going to see that.
It's kind of interesting, too, because right now Brian has a decision insofar as he could just play Brazen Borrower and trade, right? Just 3-1, block your flyer. And I don't think that that's bad.
That's a great point. And Ken knows about it, so he's going to have to make a decision. And he says, okay, fine. Do it.
Because if Brian is taking exactly Lurrus into account, then I'd rather save the removal spell, even if it's a more expensive one. Because think of Petty Theft in this matchup. It's fine. Obviously, it shined in the last game of bouncing the Legion Angel and stuff like that. But just trading here and saying, hey, I have a Frostbite in reserve for Lurrus that, open deck list, blah, blah, blah. I know you probably brought it in. I don't know if it's in your hand, whatever. It's kind of nice to have that safety net as opposed to Brazen Borrower against Lurrus, which is effectively nothing. Ooh, we're just going to do nothing instead.
Wow,
okay.
How about just the nothing? He's going to play Draneth Magistrate here. This says your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. And it's a 1/3. So it's just going to be land go here from BBD, who still has Brazen Borrower, decides that he'd likes to prioritize using Brazen Borrower here, apparently, as he did have Expressive Iteration, but decided not to cast it.
All right, little beatdown.
Yeah, this isn't bad. And he is getting through here for 2 with the Magistrate. Down to 15 goes BBD, who's going to crack his Fabled Passage.
The scary thing right now, if I'm Ken, if I'm in his shoes, I'm just thinking, if a dragon shows up, then I'm in a lot of trouble. Like if Goldspan Dragon shows up, I'm in a lot of trouble.
Right. Now we see the Magistrate back to hand. That means that Expressive Iteration gets a little better as he can actually cast the spells from exile if he finds something that he'd like to cast. Again, usually it's just a land. That's kind of the name of the game with Iteration, and we see that again here. And of course, Magistrate doesn't affect that. It doesn't say you can't play spells from places other than your hand. It says you can't cast spells specifically.
Yeah, Brian's Expressive Iteration didn't go great, though. He put a land in exile that he then played, and then he drew a mountain. So, he's struggling a little bit now, and now Lurrus is working itself into the equation, going to bring back either Selfless Saver or the Alseid. So, Brian's draw step needs to be a, let's just say, I don't think it has to be great, but it needs to be better than what he's been drawing over the past couple of turns.
So he's going to Brazen Borrower here on end step. That one's the one coming off of Adventure, and he finds Ox of Agonis.
We could do worse.
That's not bad. The kind of forced attack here with the Brazen Borrower is going to knock Ken down to 17. The question is, does BBD want to take a turn here to Petty Theft and Brazen Borrower and then Ox the next turn? That gives him max value, or does he feel like he just needs to throw the Ox on the battlefield here and try to get something rolling for next turn, with a blocker down?
Well, that answers that question. I was thinking he might cast the Ox, but we're gonna do a little petty thefting. I suppose. Well, you got to respond now, probably.
Yeah, probably so. And it's kind of a forced Lurrus, right?
Feels that way. Yep.
Otherwise, they can just get it back again anyway. So here comes Lurrus back to hand off of Petty Theft. Although
Brian not thrilled with something. We got a little bit of a reaction up top. Oh, I know what he's not thrilled with.
He got double blued.
Yep.
Wow, that is brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was going to respond to the magistrate by casting his Brazen Borrower as a creature, but he either got oh, that's really tough. He's basically, I mean, the Brazen Borrower's kind of stuck now. Oh, he finds Magma Opus. He doesn't have mana for it, so we're probably just going to see the Ox, but yikes.
That's brutal.
That can be very, because the problem here is that he needs to use his mana on not Brazen Borrower, and also he can't cast it. So, effectively that Brazen Borrower probably went on an adventure and didn't come back, at least for the foreseeable future.
At least
and that can be really tough. Boy, that was rough there for BBD, the double blue.
So it looks like we're going to discard Magma Opus for a treasure, play our land, play our Ox, peel a couple. Hope that this can buy us some time. Let's see what we ripped off.
Yeah, this is a really important sequence here. Wow, he found some nice stuff. Alrund's Epiphany and a Crowan War. The question is, can he survive here? Like, now can he survive?
Yeah, is he able to make it through this turn? Which I'm leaning yes.
Yeah, he is. He takes 4, 5, 6, 7 if there was no blockers, but he even has one, so... Wow. What a turn here for BBD. Just the Brazen Borrower not able to attack. It's really tough because Ken would be at 11.
Yeah, we'd be racing.
Epiphany,
yep.
And it would be 6, 6. It would actually be 6, 8, but
yeah.
I don't want to keep, harping back to that misstep, but ouch.
No, I'm with you. It matters. Actually, right now it matters a lot. Right now it matters a lot. All right,
so we're going to see the Angel hit the battlefield, go grab another one. He's actually going to put the counter on the creature that can't attack this turn, but it makes it into an effective blocker for the 3/1.
Especially in combination with a card like Selfless Savior, too. If some sort of damage removal spell works itself into the equation. 5/4, obviously bigger than a 3/1, and then the little dog is there to either... Selfless Savior is actually pretty nice, and Asset of Life Bounty. So, this is part of what makes this version of Mono White pretty nice, is that these little 1-drops actually do a nice job of protecting the bigger, more key creatures. So another example of that is Luminarch Aspirant attacking into a 4/2, and you can use either one of those, 1-mana knuckleheads to win this combat.
Now, this thing is not over. BBD has to refocus here after the auto-tapper thing, and he's going to have to try to hit something off of Alrund's Epiphany, try to get the 5/4 out of the way, and find a way to win the game. Yeah. The Ox is going to go back in the bin, and woo, there's a Goldspan Dragon.
There are worse places to start.
Yeah. And he has to, of course, now map out the turn cycles where he says, okay, can I get away with getting the Goldspan Dragon on the battlefield and then going for Epiphany? Or do I need to just go for Epiphany, get the birds, get the extra turn, and then start going from there? Which is what he's going to do. And let's not forget the Crowan War in hand here for BBD as well, with that 5/4 on the other side. He could at least force Ken to burn a card to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Galazeth. Last name Prismari. They named a school after him.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Pretty big deal.
Got his name on the school. Let's see. He's got 3, 5, 6, 7. He's got a lot of mana here.
Yeah, the tough thing though is that just the actual inability to make any meaningful attack right now.
It is tough.
Ken making that Legion Angel into a 5/4 was very, very smart, because if it was a 4/3, you're still going to have some difficulty getting through it because of the Alseid of Life's Bounty. But you could only use the Alseid once effectively, right? Mm-hmm. So then maybe you're able to trade with it and get it out of the way and blah, blah, blah. But right now, here we go with this sort of thing. It being a 5/4 is messing things up. That's what I'll say.
That's right. And, this game goes very deep here because BBD knows about Lurrus in hand as well, right? And he knows about the possibility for the Alseid or the dog or whatever to come back again, and those type of sequences. But as it stands, it looks like Ken was content to just trade off.
Now I'm trying to look for avenues to victory here for Brian. I don't think the game is over or anything. It's 14-9. The game is very close. How can you maximize this copy of the Acron War? I'm thinking of things like that right now.
Yeah, it's really tough. It doesn't feel like he can make it great.
Yeah, like if you play the Acron War, you cash in a treasure to do it, which is not that big of a deal because Brian's got what I would say is a pretty good amount of mana to work with. But you cash that in, you target. What do you target? Options are, if you target anything but the Alseid, I don't really think you're going to get anywhere.
Right. So you could just use it to effectively kill that, but
yeah,
it just doesn't really work out well for you if the Lurrus just comes down and buys it right back again.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up targeting the Magistrate, but it was the same effect in the end. And speaking of what we were just talking about, well, there's our friend. And unfortunately, it's not dog helping dog. It's going to get back the Alseid of Life's bounty. And that thing's just going to sit there and be a massive annoyance. Alongside, by the way, this card, the Draneth Magistrate, that's annoying as well. There's a little bit of a hate bears thing kind of happening here as well. And, it must be said, every turn that passes, it's getting worse for BBD because of the Luminarch Aspirant just throwing counters around.
It's doing its thing.
It really is.
It's one of the best 2-mana white drops of all time. I absolutely adore that card, and it has been very, very good this game.
Now, there are openings, though, for BBD to try to get something done here. We found another Acron War. That's kind of interesting. But again, the Alseid of Life's bounty just kind of hanging out again.
Being a pain.
But there's nothing in the air, right, on Ken's side. So if BBD was able to get a threat down and then maybe get lucky and hit an Alrund's Epiphany or something like that, he could steal this game back. But if we just run this iteration for the next 3 or 4 turns, Ken's going to win.
Yep, totally agree with that.
Ken's sweating it too. He's on 33 points here in league play, right in the middle of the pack. BBD a step down on 28.
So we're going to start with the dragon?
Yeah.
Okay.
These things just spew treasure and gold all over the battlefield.
They really do. All right, so you get a little chip shot in there, down to 11. 11 to 7 now. The Draneth Magistrate being a problem here for the Ox and the Brazen Borrower.
That's right.
Quickly play that Plains. Okay.
That did not last long in his hand, did it?
No. This is pretty nice, too. Skyclave Apparition finally finding something of relevance to take care of.
That's right. It's going to be Galzeth. He's going to take that out, and the board gets bigger on Ken's side, smaller on Brian's side. Another counter's going to hit. These all are compelled to attack, but with just one little blocker back, this looks like lethal. Block 3, 6, 7, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And that's going to do it. Ken Yukuhiro